I'm very happy today to speak with Gilbert Acherman, the chairman of Straumann, the world leader in aesthetic dentistry. Gilbert Acherman has been associated with Straumann for over 20 years, first as the CFO, then the CEO, and over the last 11 years as the chairman of the board. During that time, Straumann went from a relatively small company with about 100 million Swiss francs revenues and 400 employees to a juggernaut with today 8,000 employees and about 2 billion Swiss franc sales. And of course, in the process, becoming the number one in this industry. Gilbert is also a board member on several boards, listed companies, private companies, some not-for-profits, including IMD. Among the publicly listed companies that he is on the board of is Julius Baer, the private bank. One last thing I should mention, for full disclosure, is that we're very proud of the fact that Gilbert Acherman is also an IMD graduate. He is an EMBA graduate of the class of 2000. Gilbert, you started out your career in banking. 10 years at UBS in investment banking. Why did you choose to start your career in banking? What was appealing about banking?
Well, banking at the time was actually still a very, how should I say, a interesting and a reputable industry. And that obviously changed a little bit over the past 20 plus years. But I was interested in the bigger scheme of finance, in the globalization of it, and above all, the opportunity to actually interact with the executive suite of different companies in different industries, having a global role. So, you know, engaging in different parts of the world, the US, obviously Europe, but also Mexico. So that was appealing to me. It was kind of the alternative to go into strategy consulting.
So it was basically a way of getting familiar with various sectors of industry and various parts of the world.
I started my professional career in a banking apprenticeship, okay? So I actually have more than 10 years in banking. And then I went back to university to do my bachelor, right. And then I did my investment banking, my 10 years in investment banking.
So how much did these years in banking shape your perspective on the world and on business and shape the rest of your career?
I would say it gave me a much more global perspective. You know, obviously coming from a very small village in the eastern part of Switzerland and from a household that wasn't very international, kind of gave me the opportunity to see the world and see the differences and the diversity of the world. So a much more global perspective. I think it started to create this curiosity to see different things, you know, in different industry. Also to better understand some of the differences between industries, but also culturally, some of the big differences. So I think it started to raise this intellectual curiosity within me.
It sounds like you enjoyed it massively, but you still decided to leave after about 10 years in investment banking.
So you are an analyst, you are an associate, you know, you work hard day and night almost. But that's not really the issue. So it's actually very good school, okay, for perseverance, you know, and resilience and all of that. But at the same time, it's transactional. So you do your deal, whether that's an M&A or a divestiture or a restructuring or a fundraising, and then you move on. So that takes 3-6 months, but you never look after, well, what's actually the outcome? What's the result of it, you know? And at one point I said, actually, I would like to see what my decisions, what the actions, you know, are actually delivering. Well, what is the outcome? So that's why I was actually interested to move into the corporate world. And the Straumann IPO, that was my last banking transaction that I led. And that's how I ended up at Straumann.
And so, again, Straumann at the time is a relatively small company. First, you become the CFO for 4 years, and then you become the CEO for about 8 years. During that time, the company grows immensely. Tell us some of the highs and the lows, some of the great moments and some of the more challenging moments of these 8 years as CEO of this company, of this fast-growing company.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you stated, I think the dynamic growth, that's been hugely exciting. So, we were talking about 35% growth. So something between 35 for a number of years. That's not easy, but it's hugely exciting. We started to, let's say, conquer the world in the sense that we established our direct presence across the globe, in Asia, in the US. We established a manufacturing site in the US. And we made it to the #1 player in implants during that time. Because when I took over, we were #2, #3-ish type of thing. And so that was the positive.
And the market was much smaller.
And the market was significantly smaller, At the same time, obviously, more on the low side was, when we entered into the financial crisis, we were too slow to react, okay? We kind of felt, okay, that's a temporary thing, we'll actually come back, we don't need to do much, and that proved to be, in hindsight, proved to be the wrong perspective. And then it took us quite a while to actually re-energize the company, also make some structural changes. So that's probably one of the things that are more on the lower end. That's the professional side, and I'd say, as an individual, I probably one of the guys who did not manage well work-life balance, So, my marriage went into shatters, and so that's also probably a low end of things,
Any things so you mentioned already, looking back, I would have preferred to react quicker on during the financial crisis. Anything else that strikes you as you're saying, here are one or two things that I learned along the way?
My direct successor that we appointed when I moved to the board, that didn't work out, okay? It took us actually too long a time to correct that, okay? So basically what the common thread here is, if you have this situation, you're probably much better off to react quicker, and maybe sometimes it's better to be maybe too quick. It's better to be too quick than too slow. So that's kind of my takeaway, which is something actually that came in very helpful for the COVID situation. There, I think we did a lot of things well, and we were extremely fast.
So I'll come back on this, sure. But I also want to come back on the positive. So you said, look, we grew 35%, we expanded internationally and so on. When you say it like this, it sounds effortless. It sounds like the world was just waiting for you guys. Of course, it's never like this. So what did you guys do well during that period to warrant that success? Because you also went from #2, #3 to #1. Yeah. You expanded the market. You conquered. I mean, there must have been some obstacles that you guys overcame, and there must be some specific skill or what allowed you to be so successful during all these years?
No, I think trust in people is basically what combines it all, okay? I think we always looked at our industry as an industry that is not very mature. So we looked to get talent from industries which are much more advanced and much more mature, trying to bring those expertise and that skill into the company and combine it with what we have. So doing so allowed us to actually execute rather successfully on that strategy. If you are in a small setup out of the Basel land, okay, that we were, obviously you believe you own the world in Switzerland, but you have no clue about the rest of the world. So bringing in that much more international perspective, these backgrounds of people that have done this before, and give them, the freedom to actually execute on a strategy and also the trust. That's probably the recipe that worked well.
So hiring more international folks coming from other industries that had already been part of a globalization and of a fast growth, fast deployment sort of process.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is again the situation today. Today we have other challenges. So you look at what have other industries already done related to this, and then we'll try to bring people in that understand this. Direct to consumer, digitalization, things like this.
One last question on this. Is there something that is profoundly somehow Swiss to be able to have these incredible champions in niche-like markets? Because again, you are a technological leader, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's not entirely obvious why a small company initially from Basel has to become world leader in dental implants.
Obviously, we are in medical devices, and I think in terms of capabilities that Switzerland has with the university, the ETH, EPFL, etc., then a very, very small domestic market, which necessitates going international early on. I think a ability to, deal with other cultures in an open-minded way. I think all of that comes together, and if you look around the globe, many small countries are hugely successful in technology or in medical devices. Think of Israel, think of Denmark, right. Think of Switzerland. So I think that's kind of the commonality.
So small national market which forces you to go outside, correct. But also you're mentioning the strong ecosystem, yes. And the partnership with universities.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, shifting to your board career, you are serving on, of course, on the board of Straumann, also on the board of Julius Baer, and you've served over the years on multiple boards, listed companies, private companies, not-for-profits, again, including IMD. I'm going to ask you 3 questions on this. What's the role of a board? What's the role of a chair? And to what extent do these roles of the board and or of the chair change with the industry, okay, and with the setting? But first, let's start with what's the role of a board? Is there a general answer to the role of a board?
Yeah, for me, the board's role is to create a framework for the company and its management or leadership to deliver sustainable success, okay? And in combination with that, allow the leadership, be it the CEO, the executive committee, to be successful. That's basically the role of the board. And at the same time, obviously, ensuring the right oversight, and governance.
Now, when you say framework, what does a framework look like?
First of all, it's dynamic, because I think the world is changing, competitive landscape is changing. Topics like cybersecurity hasn't been, or ESG has today a very different, a more important meaning than it used to have like 10 or 20 years ago. So it's dynamic, okay? So it's on one hand, making sure you have the right people, you have the right organizational setup. Obviously, you need to have a commonly understood vision or strategy, but above all, you need to make sure you are able to execute on it or deliver on it. And I think that there are these different elements that you consistently have to think about and make sure that they are, in the best possible shape to actually deliver on that aspiration.
Some folks might look and might say, and here I know I'm playing devil's advocate, but I think it's important. Some folks might say, look, when you were the CEO of Straumann, you worked 70, 80 hours a week. You're doing this full time. Yeah. And then the board shows up, a few hours here and there. How can a board know enough, be helpful enough compared to the knowledge you had, the intricate closeness that you had of the business and of the people? How is it possible for board members then to contribute?
I think that's an excellent question, and I may have a little bit, let's say, a different perspective than what a proxy advisor would tell you. Okay, I believe it's the board's obligation to be knowledgeable enough about the industry, okay, and the company to actually help its leadership and the organization. And that necessitates spending time, be it, with the management team, be it in the market. So for instance, we require our board members to do cold travel, with the sales guys, at least a few days per year. We require our board to go to, 1 or 2 scientific or trade fairs once or twice a year. So because we want the board to be knowledgeable about the space that we are actually active in. Because only like that you allow to become, let's say, the coach and to have a productive interaction with your executive team.
Do you have, so you've said, I require my board members to travel to conferences, I require them to go to visit customers. Do you have an estimate of how many days a year being a board member of Straumann require, or Julius Baer?
We have to disclose it. It's somewhere between 20 to 30 days,
Okay.
per year. Because
That's a lot.
Well, I think that's the norm in a public company nowadays. Okay. And I'm not talking about the German. The German, I would say, it's like 30% of my time, whereas an ordinary board member is 20 to 30 days, something like this.
And for Julius Baer, you estimate that that's also about what it takes, 20 to 30 days.
Yeah, I would say,
Now, you mentioned chairman. In this context of, on one side, oversight, on the other side, partnership and coaching and challenge, and productive challenge, what's the role of the chair?
It's mostly people-oriented. So obviously, you gotta have a functional relationship or partnership with the CEO. If the chairman and the CEO don't work together or don't function, you have a problem. Okay. So that's one and probably the most important element. The other one is obviously to have an effective and efficient board. Okay. So it's not like control and command. It's kind of leading, by, how should I say, by engagement and getting these people engaged, giving them enough space to voice their opinions or even to ask questions, sometimes maybe not so smart questions, but you try to orchestrate all these individuals who are obviously, esteemed and experienced people, but it's not the same as being a CEO, okay? Because this is a group of very independent, minded, and proven leaders, okay? And there you have to make sure that this works, effectively and efficiently to the benefit of the company and in support of the executives and the CEO.
To what extent does the role of the board and/or the role of the chair change, either across industries or across types of company, listed, non-listed? You've served, again, on multiple types of boards. Do you see big differences, or are these fundamentally the same principles?
I think there are big differences. Obviously, private markets, public markets, that's a huge difference, okay? Because in private markets, it's clear, the aim is clear. You want to deliver value, and returns to the owners. And that's really all that matters, huh? Whereas obviously in public companies, a lot of, what I call this public political correctness governance type of thing is important, okay? With the proxies and all of that, the independence, the tenor thing, and all of this, I think in more regulated industries, also on the public side, it's much more about compliance, governance, risks.
So the oversight side.
So the oversight side. So in financial services or probably also in insurance, you do a lot of oversight work, okay? Which is not really super sexy. Let's put it this way. It's not entrepreneurial. Whereas on the industrial side, or in particular, I think with Straumann, it's a very entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, I mean, obviously, oversight is important, governance is important, all of that matters. You know, you are in compliance with all the laws and the regulations and the regulator, because it's also a very regulated space with the FDA and all of that. But we spend the majority of our time, you know, on strategic questions. How do we actually develop this company further to remain successful and keep relevant, okay, in the big schemes of things with all the other players that are actually there. Also some new entrants, you know, maybe from technology side and God knows what, you know. So it's more like 80% is kind of creative, you know, what I call the entrepreneurial side. And when I say entrepreneurial, I mean sustainable long-term. And it's in financial services, it's probably more like 70% is oversight and 30, at best, 30% is kind of, okay, how do I evolve the business model and things like this.
Is this one of the reasons why, as I was looking through your profile, you have served on the board of so many private companies? Is it because it's just more fun for you as a director?
For me, personally, yeah, that's definitely preference. I believe having impact is more possible, one, in smaller outfits or maybe mid-size outfits, okay, than the huge, large, super large public companies. And that's what motivates me, and that's what I'm interested in. At the end of the day, I want to create some impact, you know.
Let me come back to Straumann now. So you were CFO and then CEO.
Yes.
4 years, 8 years. Then you joined the board in 2009. You became the chairman of the board in 2010. Going from an executive position to a non-executive chairmanship is a challenge. How did you manage the shift to a non-executive role?
Well, of course.
But what hurdles did you have to confront?
No, but I think it hugely depends on your personality, okay? Whether you're able to actually to let go and give someone else, your successor in that case, you know, the necessary freedom, and also be prepared to accept that this new CEO will do things differently, okay? And will have a different perspective and at times even reverse some of the things you actually implemented, okay? And you know, I think that ability or having that ability or not having that ability is a function of your personality. So I believe I have this, I'm able of doing this.
So you didn't have to work at it. It's something you've got it or you don't? Or you had to work at it?
Probably you can work at it, you know, but I think you have either a bias towards one end or the other one. And I would say I have a bias towards, I'm able to let go, okay? And the other thing is, look, I was at the stage of my life where I knew if I were to continue the CEO role, I would probably end up in disaster, you know, private health, you know, burnout, things like this. You know, my private life wasn't the way it was supposed to be. So I had kind of a motivation also to change my lifestyle.
Okay. Having said that it was the right time, which probably helps, then there's this question of how do you let go and change role?
Yeah, and on top of that, as you've seen, you know, I did several other things, you know, then in combination. So that wasn't my only activity. I actually diversified my activities quite a lot, you know, with other companies, even one other German role at the time. And that helps you to kind of get distance, you know, and gain distance.
Does the role of the board change during a crisis, or does the relationship between the board and management change during a crisis?
I don't think the role changes. It becomes obviously a little bit more intense. I think it becomes more frequent, okay, the interaction. I So you have many more meetings than you would usually have, okay? It's because it's not the ordinary course of business. But I think the role as such between who does what, you know, and that you work in tandem and that you are a partner and then you try your best to make these guys, keep these guys successful, you know, and also provide them confidence, okay? Because obviously in a situation like this, you got to do unpleasant things. And you got to back them up and say, guys, it's okay, okay? And, you know, yes, the share, and don't worry about the share price, okay? We got to do what's right for us and the company and what would allow us to remain or return to this sustainable success that we want to have. And yeah, you back them up and you help them.
That means that you as a board need to absorb some of the pressure from the outside, right? Because the outside world might kind of expect you to do more or, I mean, let me take the IMD case, right? The board could have been a lot more pressing on us. Not that you were not pressing, but you could have said, for example, we will not tolerate losses, right? And I think one of the things that I'm very grateful for is the fact that the board was able to say, look, clearly we need to reduce the cost base and play defense. We also need to look to the future and continue to invest in key areas. And so you exercised a lot of self-restraint, right? At least that's the impression I had. That's you know, I'm also thinking that, you know, at some point you have the foundation board and you're thinking the foundation board is going to look at us and said, what? You guys allowed this? So it felt that the board absorbed some of the pressure and only transferred some pressure to us, but transferred just the right amount of pressure to us. And it sounds a little bit like that's also what you did at Straumann, to say, you know, we want them to have some pressure, but we also want them to feel that they need to continue to do what's right for the company.
No, absolutely. I think it's very similar. And the other thing is, I mean, one of the issues, for instance, you know, is, you know, you have these compensation models, and that they are obviously scrutinized heavily by the outside world, the institutionals and the proxies, okay? And I mean, in a situation like this, these compensation models don't work because, you know, they are modeled not around extremes, right. They are modeled around normality, okay? So you can either say, okay, the model, you know, provided that sort of result, and that means you guys don't get paid, you know, neither bonus nor long-term incentive. Or as a board, you can say, hey guys, you actually, you know, you worked your butt off, you did extremely well, you actually did much more than you would do under normal circumstances, and we want to recognize that and reward that, okay? Hey, you don't get law for this from the outside, huh? But the board said, okay, we do it discretionarily. And then you get heat, okay? But that's what the board is here for. In the long run, that's the right thing to do. I remain convinced. But that's just one specific example.
But you see, when you say you take heat, that's what I mean, right?
Yeah,
what I was saying is you have to absorb some of the pressure from the outside.
Yeah, but that's what the board is here for. I mean, you know, you are decently paid, and that's also stewardship, okay? I mean, it's not to fulfill short-term interests of some sort of investor. At the end of the day, it's to make sure that you do the right. It's about this whole framework, okay, for sustainable long-term success in an entrepreneurial manner. And if that means, you know, you got to do something that is out of the ordinary, and that is maybe not, you know, in the book. I mean.
No, of course, legal. I understand, but it's unusual.
Yeah,
and
then you do it.
Like it
then you do it. Then you do it. Okay. Now, I mean, in hindsight, they all say that's the right thing you've done. Okay.
Right. What's most exciting about Straumann's future?
Look, I mean, you said I've been with this organization a long time. We have this, what we call Go 5 initiative or aspiration So, and that's in the most simple terms, how do we get the company where it is today to a 5 billion revenue company over the next, whatever, 10 years, okay?
From 2 to 5.
Yeah, and that's something obviously we've been working on with support of the IMD, and that tells you simply what the opportunity is. You know, we are in a niche with, you know, tooth replacement and tooth correction with the implants, the aligners, but that's a huge opportunity. Okay, so if we don't do everything wrong, we should be able to continue to nicely grow. That's one. The other one is also, I think, intellectually, you know, we still are a B2B company. Okay, we service our dentists, dental practices. More and more, we need to kind of get into the minds of the consumers, meaning the patients.
Who would ask for your products.
Exactly. Because what's happening, we see a continuous concentration on the customer side. Okay, so you have the dental service organization, you have the big chains, okay, and more and more we are not servicing, you know, the mom and pop dentist shops. We are servicing the big groups. Obviously, that changes the negotiation situation quite a lot. So if we are not able to actually kind of reach the minds and the hearts of the consumers directly and hopefully, you know, bring them to the right provider, okay, we become less relevant.
Well,
so
you
that
become more exposed to customer power.
Absolutely. Okay. So that change from a pure B2B into a B2B2C, then the whole digitalization that comes with it, the technology, which is big part of that. You know, we transitioned from premium to multi-segment. You know, we're serving everything. We evolved from a very pure product to a more solution-oriented player. So the next phase is now, you know, how do we tackle this technology shift, and how do we actually make sure we stay relevant for the DSOs, for the big customers, and at the same time are able to get into the minds of the patients, you know. And that's super exciting, also intellectually, okay? And so I think not only the growth, but also what it all takes to do that, I think it is a huge opportunity, and I mean, assures that, you know, meetings and agendas will not get dull.
How present are the final consumers, the patients, in your discussion? So you've just said, look, there's an exciting business agenda. How successful are you, and if so, how do you manage to make sure that this is not just about money and about implants and about devices, but it also remains about the patients? Does that play a role in maintaining the energy in the company, or do the patients disappear in time?
No, I think the patients are continuously gaining. I mean, honestly, they are not yet as present, you know, as they should be, okay? And we're working hard on this. Now, having entered into direct-to-consumer aligners, you know, with Dr. Smile, for instance, that's helping from a business perspective to make it very visible to everybody. Okay. But genetically, or from our DNA, historically, we are, you know, the patient is not necessarily at the core of thinking. Okay. Although, historically, when this company was founded, you know, it was all about patients, you know. What kind of devices do you do to provide the best possible treatment outcome and, you know, quality of life to patients? And that was done together with universities in the development and everything. So somewhere it has always been, but being obviously B2B, it kind of has become a little bit second stage. But it needs to be much more center stage going forward. And we're working hard on this one, and I can tell you it's not easy. So this
Why is it not easy?
because it's not part of the DNA, you know, and it has a lot to do with culture at the end of the day, you know, putting the consumer at the core of all you do, so you may know we've spent already a lot of time and effort and money on culture, you know. And we will continue to do that. And that is one big element to make sure, okay, let's rewire the people, that this patient becomes much more obvious, and that this becomes kind of the centerpiece of why we're doing things, okay, to the benefit of the patient.
Privately, I will tell you the first thing that my 23-year-old son told me this morning when he got up. He said, "Man, it's really fun to have the tooth installed." So he just he lost this tooth 15 or 16 years ago in a freak accident, and basically has had a hole here and then some stuff for 15 years. And the local dentist, who by the way is the Straumann guy in Lausanne, just installed him finally the implant because they felt that his mouth had finally stabilized. They had to do bone graft and so on. But the first thing he said this morning, I swear to God, the first thing he said when he got out of his room is he said, "Man, it's really good to have a tooth." So that's why I'm asking, because you are, I have 3 of yours here, but here, as you said, it doesn't change as much. Here, it changes the guy's life.
No, absolutely.
It really does.
No, the impact, I mean, we have these patient testimonials, you know, people who have had no teeth or just, I mean, miserable teeth. The quality of life, the impact it has on your self-esteem, you know, on your appearance and all of that. It's extraordinary. If you see these stories, okay, I mean, you start crying. It really is. It really is, huh?
And so one of the challenges is, how do we get these testimonials to be part of more of everyday discussions?
Yeah, and our new CEO does a lot of that, actually. He really has fully embraced this, you know, and we see, yesterday they had a town hall meeting, and you see, you get it, that is always part of these town halls, okay? See what we do. And in a purpose-oriented world, that becomes even more important, you know. It's important also for the people that work with us. I mean, we are in a good space. We do good to society and for patients, okay? We don't need to do a lot of soul searching. Why are we existing, okay? It's actually quite easy, huh? And that's super.
Last question, Gilbert, and a more personal one, and you'll see here, of course, the influence of the leadership professor. Let's assume for a second that you and I were at St. Gallen together 30-some years ago, and you know, we got along well, but somehow our paths diverged, and we lost sight of one another for 30 years. And now we reconvene, and I remember well the Gilbert of 30-some years ago, and I meet the Gilbert of today. What kind of differences would I observe between these two people? And if there are differences, to what extent did you actually work on creating these differences? How much of the Gilbert Acherman we see today is a person that you worked on?
Well, first of all, you see some more gray hairs and some more pounds. I think I have been, or I used to be, an introvert. I still am, actually. I think I'm much more balanced, much more rich in the sense of personality and experience, obviously, much more. I think I'm more tolerant. I have lost some of the edges, okay? Because obviously, you know, I was quite driven and aggressive, and so kind of it's become a little bit more round. I think I managed to stay, let's say, humble. Okay, I still feel the most comfortable with, you know, my old friends from the St. Gallen time, you know, who don't care what I do and how successful or not successful I am. So that's important to me. I'm, intellectually probably much richer and much more experiences. But all in all, I think I'm still very much the person that I used to be. I don't think I lost kind of touch with my base.
Right.
Let's put it this way. Okay.
But did you work? So you said I've become more tolerant. Some of the edges are now smoother. Did you work at this, or did it just happen?
I think it's a question of getting older, and obviously also looking.
But some folks get older and
No, but you
tolerant.
look into the mirror, and then you also observe some things, and then it's also a question of your environment. Your family, your wife, partner, whatever. Are they able to actually show you, and I think I'm extremely well supported in that regard. that my surrounding keeps me, very straight in that regard. Okay.
But it sounds like you did work at it.
No, I did. Yeah.
Some feedback and some helpful feedback.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Gilbert, thank you very much for your time and for your insights. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jean-François.